reality is government incentivizes certain behaviors, and they do that through different means. It could be through education, as far as directing people or pointing people a certain direction, or it could be through the tax law, as far as trying to get people to do something over something else. But you and I had the opportunity a few years ago to opt into a 401k program that was being offered to us.
Money is one of the things that creates freedom of time or lack thereof. It's the fuel for that, or the thing people spend the most time chasing or trying to get more of, or trying to handle better when they leave high school, or they graduate high school, or they graduate college, or they graduate law school. Money is all.
Welcome to the Cashflow Legendz podcast with your hosts Nate, Brandon, and Brock. Remember, our insights are not direct financial advice, so consult with your financial team before making any decisions based on the topics discussed in this.
Welcome back to Cashflow Legendz. Nate, it is good to see your face. I've already seen it a couple times this morning, but officially under the record button. We have already had a great start to the day, and as y'all notice, if you're watching this, if you're not and you're listening, we're missing one of the trio. Brock, I believe, is at a Lifestyle Investor event, maybe, or maybe that's coming up.
Maybe.
But who knows?
Yeah, I can't remember.
The guy's always somewhere.
One way or another, he's out today.
One way or another, he's out today, and we knew that he was going to be out. We don't remember where. Sorry, Brock. So today, before we get going, Nate, let's think about all the times you went through school from pre-K through your college years. All right. To kind of frame up what we're going to be talking about today.
Hey, before we do that, I want to say something. You had no idea I was going to say this, but it's fresh on my mind, and it's something that really means a lot to us. We had somebody reach out to me from the podcast this week, and of course I'm not revealing personal information, but eventually he'll hear this. He said that I just wanted to thank you because from listening to your podcast, y'all encouraged me to get plugged back in church, and I haven't been to church in 10 years, essentially. And so I got to have a conversation with him, and we kind of talked a little bit more about that. And ultimately, the Lord's just working on his heart, and he's discovering that he was made for more. And it's just a beautiful story. And what's funny about that is me and Brandon, we're talking about how, we have this podcast that's supposed to be about money, but it's not about money.
Yep.
It's about the Lord. It's about relationships. It's about how we can be better stewards of his gifts. That's what it's really all about.
Yeah, we were having that conversation yesterday, Nate, and I'm thinking about making a shirt that says it ain't about the money. Because the reality is every conversation that we have, even if it starts with the premise of we know something about money somebody else doesn't, or we want to pour into somebody, it always goes back to way deeper than that. Our behavior, our relationships, our thought processes, what we learned when we grew up, all those things. And so that's really cool. I'm glad you shared that. That was
so. If you thought this was a straight up financial podcast, we just snuck in like a ninja on you. So
yeah, snuck in. That's exactly right. All right. So go back to your pre-K through all the way till you graduated, Nate. College. Because I got to be careful because Nelson Nash says graduate is in leaving this earth, but graduating.
Still college, breathing right now.
Still here. And name the times that you remember talking about money at school as a class, and maybe something that benefited you from that. And before we start on this, I was an educator for 14 years. I love educators. Nate's wife is still in education. Anything that we say is not about the people in the building. It's about the system that created education. All right, go ahead, Nate.
Well, the reality is public education, every teacher essentially has, and I'm sure there's a formal name for this, but every teacher essentially has a framework for or parameters for what they're supposed to be teaching and what they're not supposed to be teaching.
Yep.
Especially with standardized testing now at the state level. Now you have in Texas they call it the TEKS, or something
Yeah.
something about the TEKS.
Texas
What?
Essential Knowledge and Skills.
Yeah. Um, so those are the TEKS are really important, and there are some educators out there that believe they should just be teaching the test because that's what they've been conditioned to believe,
In Texas, that's known as the
because
STAR
they're
test.
held to those standards of, hey, what are my students scoring on these tests? There's others who believe if you can teach the TEKS properly, it takes care of the test. And ultimately, the TEKS are really the foundation. So I say all that to say, um, I don't remember a great deal of things I learned about money in school. We didn't have a financial education class in our now. Dave Ramsey's gotten into the school system in a lot of places across the country, and so there are students now who have some foundation that we didn't start out with. But even in college, I really enjoyed economics.
Uh-huh.
I loved just studying the causes and effects of markets and things
Mhm.
like that. Those were really interesting to me. But again, there was nothing specifically related to money, as far as how we use it in our lives and things like that I can think back on and go, man, that was really valuable for me.
Nate, for me, I'm similar. I think I remember maybe somewhere along the way in eighth grade having a little section of like financial math where we like supposedly learn how to manage a checkbook or something basic, and that might have been home economics. I don't remember, but it was a real basic foundational thing.
Yeah, we did have I remember now, we did have like almost like a bookkeeping or accounting
Yes.
class or
Okay.
something like
That
that.
may be what I'm thinking about.
Um,
But
I
now
could,
you
I,
also,
I could say the teacher's name, but some people would know exactly who we're talking about. So I'm not going to call her out or anything like that because I don't want people to think that I didn't learn anything by being in her class.
well, you've also got, you also went as a business major to college,
Yeah.
right? And that's kind of where your background as far as having a little knowledge on economics and finding a love for learning about that. At a very simple level, Nate, at any time did you learn about anything related to Austrian economics?
Not at all. I had no idea what Austrian economics was, until Ron Paul introduced that idea and that topic into my
Okay.
life. And that was well past college.
Yep. All right. So at a very simple level, everything taught at school is typically through the lens of, in Texas, certain teaching standards that connects to a test. Now, this has been ongoing since the Department of Education took over or became a thing in the, I think, 1980, roughly. Don't quote me on that. Yet, money is one of the things that creates freedom of time or lack thereof for, it's the fuel for that, or the thing people spend the most time chasing or trying to get more of or trying to handle better when they leave high school or they graduate high school or they graduate college or they graduate law school. Money is always involved. Let me work backwards. Somebody who's got a law degree, almost always they have hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt unless they're very fortunate and their family had a lot of money to be able to pay that. Medical side, same thing. Even if you left college and you had a degree in a 4-year degree, often there's money that has to be paid back, student loans. If you went straight into the workforce, You had to learn how to manage money immediately, buying groceries, paying taxes, paying insurance, all these things. Yet none of that is taught in school. So I made this statement the other day because you'll see this a lot in social media, and I used to agree with it. Schools ought to teach more about money. They ought to have more financial education. And my mindset has shifted, being a principal for a lot of years and being out for almost 5 now. Financial education is the last thing I want school teaching my children about money about. Why? Because I know that the entire educational system is built on creating workers that trust the system of where they do and put their money. I'm gonna give you a very good example. I was talking to one of our members yesterday, and he said, Brandon, I worked for this company for a while. And he said, the first time I worked with them, when we did our benefits stuff, where you start at the beginning of the year as a new employee and you sign up for medical insurance and you meet with all the people they brought in and all that. He said, I had to opt in to how I wanted to participate with the company 401k program. Now, every company offers different qualified type plans often, but it was a 401k for them. He said, I left that company years later and I'm just now back there again. And he said, now you have to opt out of the 401k program. Now, Nate, you and I have been around. I had 401ks. I would never opt into a 401k program again. I'm not going to go into why in this episode, but the majority of traditional thinking as it relates to school encourages, just by default, doing the things that everybody's doing. What are your thoughts on that? And do you agree? Are you okay with the school teaching financial education?
Yeah, I mean, if it's taught correctly, that would make sense.
What's correct?
Yeah, yeah. I
Do
think,
we agree that the government would create standards that would make correct teaching occur on money?
well, the reality is government incentivizes certain behaviors, and they do that through different means. It could be through education, as far as directing people or pointing people a certain direction, or could be through um, the tax law, as far as trying to get people to do something over something else. But you and I had the opportunity a few years ago to opt into a 401k program that was being offered to us. Uh, and we opted out of it, because what we know and understand today is, once we are properly educated on how money actually works, then we have the ability to take control of our situation and not necessarily forego opportunities that we would have missed out on otherwise. Maybe emergencies that we can now handle on our own, because we have control. And so I think the biggest thing for us is just discovering the value of certainty and control in our lives, and how that increases our level of peace of mind. Um, and where most people, let me say this, we're not speaking against anybody who is funding a qualified plan or anything like that.
Yes, good point, Nick.
Um, what I am against, and I've said this many times, I am against people who are blindly putting money into things that they don't understand. And so if you understand exactly what you're doing, if you understand the the pros and cons of those things, and you still choose to participate, that's on
Yeah.
you. And if you're happy about your situation, you're happy about what you're doing, then we're happy for you. But if you believe that there might be a way that you can empower yourself at a level you never thought possible, you might want to lean into learning a little bit.
Yeah, Nate, and I think that's really where because the Lord's allowed us to be around great minds who've lived this and done this longer than we have, as far as Nelson's principles of becoming your own banker and the infinite banking concept. What we know is that what we teach related to whole life insurance is just going to make what you're already doing more sound, more protected, more certain, more liquid, more peace of mind. Whether you fully replace it or not is a whole nother conversation. But what ends up happening is, back to the school piece, is we are only ever taught, either directly or indirectly. And what I mean by indirectly is almost every educator there is going to say, get a savings account, get a checking account, get a good retirement plan. If you get a match, take the match. All these things are going to be the norm if they get asked. But like you just said, Nate, the real question is that going to clearly create the peace of mind that you want today, tomorrow, and in the future, and the control you want today, tomorrow, and the future, and the liquidity you want for today, tomorrow, and the future? And the reality is, Nate, those questions never get asked in school. The reality is nowhere else, when you leave the workforce, hardly, when you leave the school system, hardly will you go into a workforce where every 45 minutes a bell rings and you close what you were doing and you go do something else. Nowhere else, hardly. Even on assembly lines now that are building, AI and tech is so advanced, that you're doing a job that day. Yet the entire education system is built around that, even at college. Now, I'm not knocking going to college either. So once we accept this, then we have to reckon with, well, is there something else out there that we might benefit from learning? And are we willing to do that? So I don't want the school system teaching my kids about money, because it's built on the foundation that the bank's the best place to put your money only, that qualified plans are the only way that you can have a retirement account, air quotes for those not watching. It's built on what retirement is, which is working to a certain age and then having a pile of money you can draw off of. It's built off of models that you and I no longer agree with, and not in a Nate, not in an argumentative way anymore, more in an educated way of like, lived this way for a long time. Now I live this way and I know which one I like better. And I know why I like it better. So what do you think is one of the things that they could teach in school that would be very beneficial, but very, 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 very elementary and simple? Because if it's not simple, then we can't build a foundation off of it.
Um, so one of the examples that we talk about when it comes to efficiency is getting your dollar to do more than one job. And I think that is a lesson that could be taught at the elementary level, with analogies and things like that. And as you get older and you progress and you start to understand what those things actually are, then the dots kind of start to connect.
I like it.
But I had no idea that a dollar could do more than one job.
Yeah.
I mean, even in college, like the principle of leverage at the college level, I believe, is a principle that can be taught very easily.
Mm-hmm.
But I do not remember being taught anything about leverage when I was in school.
Yeah.
And the traditional thinking, Dave Ramsey or anybody else out there, will put a lot of fear in the hearts of people by associating risk with the word leverage. And what we figured out, and what we've learned, and what we've experienced is that you can properly apply the principle of leverage in your life without taking on massive risk.
And Nate, one of our mentors, Trent, who got it from one of his mentors, and you're always better at remembering these things from years past, but what you just said in another way, is that we believe you can reduce the probability of loss to as close to zero and still obtain and live the kind of life you think you're going to by taking risks that you're taking now with whatever your money is going into. And what do we mean by that? Traditional financial advice almost always says when you're young, take as much risk as you can if your money's in a qualified plan or in the market or doing anything, because that's where you're going to get the most growth. But also, that's where you can handle the most loss because you can recover. And what we believe is that, not what we believe, but we live, is that you don't have to chase risk to create stability and peace of mind.
Yeah, and what what most people don't realize is you don't really have time to recover.
Mm.
You have a longer timeline to smooth out the losses, so to speak. But recovery means that almost like indemnification, where you got back to the trajectory you were headed in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a loss changes your trajectory.
Yeah, yeah,
A loss changes the trajectory of where you're headed. And you, very few cases, or very few times are you going to recover that point you were headed in if you
and
experience a true loss, because opportunity cost is gone forever. If you
yeah,
lose money in the market, as an example, that is money that could have had uninterrupted growth on it the rest of your life, potentially, but now has been transferred to someone else. And now they get to enjoy the growth of that money.
yeah, Nate. At a high level, one of the things, if we were getting to create the curriculum for helping kindergartners all the way up to seniors understand money, I would build a curriculum around Parkinson's law, Willie Sutton's law, the golden rule, the arrival syndrome, and use it or lose it. And I would also take Dave Ramsey's principles, which are sound in the sense of behavior, and I would build a curriculum around how if you just change the location and the players in the game, you can do all those things better.
Yeah, Dave is really, really great about teaching discipline. We don't knock him for that at all. And he's also really great about teaching people how to reduce risk. He's not great about teaching people how to create efficiency. So,
Yep.
what if we could still reduce risk, but increase our level of efficiency, which is the power of that dollar getting to do more than one thing? And, so discipline is required in any strategy that's going to be successful.
Yeah.
Um, but there's just fundamentally some things that could be introduced at a young age that could empower people in a better way.
Yeah. And a lot of times when we talk about becoming your own banker and we talk about whole life insurance and the infinite banking concept, it kind of gets confusing. So, at a very high level, Nelson Nash wrote a book called Becoming Your Own Banker. He also wrote a couple other books. He teaches the idea of taking over the function of banking in your life through a concept called the infinite banking concept. And it just so happens that when you pair that mindset and behavior with whole life, with a mutual company that's been around for 100 plus years paying dividends, it just is the most effective, efficient, sound way to control the flow of money in our life. It really is that simple. It is not more complicated than that. And the behavior piece and the mindset piece is the hardest part to overcome early. And so we'd have to really build a foundation in school, Nate, to go, this is really what's going on. And are you open to the idea that this is really what's going on? And if you do believe that's really what's going on, then what do you do about it?
Yep.
But you could reverse engineer it with mindset and behavior foundationally. Like you just said, Nate, you talk to a kindergartner. If I give you this dollar, if you earn it, and that dollar can do two things for you for the rest of your life, would you rather put it here first or only over there where it only does one thing for you? You can make up what the two things are, make it as fun as possible. The
Well, and
kid's going to pick.
I think something else that um, is missing in a lot of just fundamental basics is understanding the value of keeping more of your money, because the way we see it often is somebody says, "Hey, I'm saving or investing 10% of my money to get a 10% rate of return," something like that. Well, what if you created a scenario by taking over the control of the banking function to where you could earn a rate of return on 50% of the money that's flowing through your life, and simultaneously still deploy it out in other areas where you could use it to your advantage, that it creates value in some way. So keeping more of your money, I mean, we talk about the value of cash flow structure. We do a video about that where we demonstrated the value of cash flow structure and keeping more of your money. Our tagline for this podcast is we want to teach you how to keep more of the money that you make so you can earn more on what you keep with as much certainty over your lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started off by talking about, what this is really about, and we mentioned stewardship, and creating efficiency with your money just enables you to be a better steward because now you have more to work with.
Yeah, Nate. I was having this conversation yesterday with somebody near and dear with me, and they're still wrapping their brain around this because they have done one thing for 57 years of their life, or they've been taught one thing. And so for the last 10 years, roughly 8 years, they've been learning something new. And they were like, hey, I think I want to pay off my house. I think that'd really give me a ton of peace of mind. And so we were discussing it, and they said, but I'm still having a hard time wrapping my brain around a few things about what we teach with whole life insurance and becoming your own banker. And I said, once you see how putting your dollar one place first before you pay off the house is going to allow you to keep more of your money working for you for the rest of your life to be able to reuse again and then pass on to the next generation, it becomes a no-brainer. It's like, why wasn't I taught this in kindergarten, in first grade, in second grade? And for those listening who have no context of what we're talking about, maybe this is the first episode or podcast you listen to or YouTube. The world has taught us in America specifically that the way money works is only one of two ways, in a lot of things. I can only save or I can spend. I can only finance through a bank or pay cash. And Nate, what you and I have begun to really understand in all things is there's almost always an edge, like on a coin. Nobody ever talks about the edge. They always talk about the head side or the tail side because it requires a little bit different thinking to put that coin up on its edge and go, I actually could use both at the same time. I can see both. And when we start seeing that, it could be simplified, Nate, in school and in education in general, that money is just a tool that has the ability to do more things at once than what we have traditionally been taught. And if you're interested in learning that, come to our class and let's start breaking down
Mm-hmm.
why that might be and what you think about what you think. Because Nate, you and I say this all the time. I say it all the time. It does not really matter what we think first. It really doesn't, because we've been given the ability to have our own thoughts and beliefs and systems. that we can build a life on, which is pretty stinking awesome in America, right? Like, that's not normal everywhere. So even if today you're listening and you go, well, hey, I'm not opposed to my kids talking about money at school. I would encourage you to think through, what are your belief systems on money? Like we started off with, Nate, it ain't about the money. It's about, what purpose are we trying to live? Where are we want to be a good steward with our dollars? What impact do we want to create? Am I trading time for money daily so much that I can't be present in other places in my life? And is that a problem to me? And then that brings us to the precipice of, what do I not know that I'm willing to start learning? Where do I need to go? What do I need to understand? And that's all of our journeys in some way or another, that, like us, that came from a point of, maybe there's something more that we're missing, but it really started with this exploration of, how can we make more money? That's really probably where it started, because we realized that trading time for money without purpose is a fool's game that most of us get caught in many, many times. So now, you got any thoughts to kind of tidy up or finish as far as school and financial education, being in school, and kind of what we talked about today?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
my kids go to school.
Yep.
I've got one that's in junior high, I've got one that's in high school, I've got two that are in college now. So, but when it comes to teaching them about money and everything like that, I am not relying on the school system to make sure that they're educated properly. And I've told my boys, because they're the oldest and the closest to being in, true adulthood. I said, if you'll just listen to me, I'm gonna save you. I'm gonna save you so much time and so much money and so much pain, because you'll be better off than 99% of people around you,
Yep.
because this stuff is real and it's life changing.
Yep. And Nate, on that note, I always used to say this as a middle school principal: where the school system has gotten out of whack is thinking, everybody outside the school system thinking it's the school system's job to parent, to grow young men and women, instead of a supporting piece. And so we're definitely not saying that the school should take over all these responsibilities. The way that we look at school, because our kids all go to public, or to go to public, to go to private, is that this is where they go to grow foundationally in the things that are like reading and writing and basic arithmetic, things like that. But the things that matter the most, their walk with the Lord, how they permeate that through the rest of their areas of life, how that relates to money, that's on us. They're gifts to us from the Lord. They're His children. And ultimately, teachers that I've ever known in the school system are just, like, 99.9% of them love what they do and have a heart for helping kids. And so that, we want to be sure that this is not a bash session on schools in general. It's just more why I don't want the federal government, and we don't want the federal government teaching anybody about money at the school system, because they obviously don't have a very good understanding of how to keep more of what they earn or keep more of the money that flows through their hands that we earn for them. So we hope that was beneficial. If you got any questions or you have any counter thoughts, we're always grateful for your feedback. We hope that you recognize and lean into the idea that this 30 minutes you took to listen, 30 minutes is something you'll never get back, and how grateful we are you took time to do that with us. Let it bring value into your life somewhere. Pick an action step you're going to take. Pick a question you're going to dive into. Pick a book you're going to read. Whatever it may be, to then take
Book a
action
call.
to bring value. Book a call. There you go. There's our sales plug. Book a call. Whatever it is, take action, because knowledge alone is just potential energy. The action is what we learn from the most. Hope you have a blessed day. We'll see you on the next one.